What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Project Cars 2 and the Ice Track Trials series. Today we're going to be taking 3 new vehicles on the Mercedes-Benz Ice Track number 2. It's been a little while since I've done this series. I keep having these big breaks in videos every now and again, but we are back today. So anyway, to start off with, we have the Chevrolet Camaro Z28. A pretty interesting little car. Now, I went for this one first of all because I thought this shouldn't be too difficult to drive on the course. I always try and go for maybe a slightly easier car to drive at first. I don't know why I thought this car was going to be easy, but it actually really wasn't. I don't know if it's just because it's a fairly powerful rear-wheel drive classic American muscle car. I don't know if it's like a more racy spec because, you know, with the livery that it has on here, which is kind of the standard livery it comes with, it has a bit of a racing look to it, and I don't know if that's actually the case, or I don't know what's going on there, but this thing really didn't like the snow. It really didn't like it at all. It just slid around, it was really slidey. On the brakes you had to be super careful, and yeah, I mean, out of the 3 vehicles I drove for this episode today, this was the hardest, and that usually isn't the case. It's usually the last car that's the hardest car to drive, because I kind of try and go for the more wacky one at the end. Starting it off maybe a bit more sane, but this time to be honest, we've got 3 cars that are all kind of, they're not too wacky, but they're also not too normal. We've got 3 kind of more average sort of cars for today's episode, but I mean, as you can see right there, have a little bit of a slide out, and it's a bit of a hard car to control. Now, when I finally did eventually get used to it, using my Logitech G29 wheel, you can kind of right yourself when you get into a bit of a predicament with a wheel quite easily. That's the good thing about a wheel over a controller. You know, little corrections and movements are a lot easier on a wheel. So I did eventually get round, but this one did take me quite a while. I don't exactly know how many attempts, probably 6, maybe even 7. There was a couple of times where I just kind of slid off too much power off the line. There was a couple of other times where, you know, halfway around the course, I just, you know, take a bit too much speed or brake a little bit too hard for one corner, and it would just completely throw me off the course. But I did eventually do it. We got a time out of the Chevrolet Camaro, and yeah, it was definitely an experience to drive, that's for sure. Next up, we have the Caterham Seven 620R. Now, this is an interesting little thing. First of all, it's basically a convertible. I mean, do you count this as a convertible? It's like a track toy. It doesn't have a roof, but I don't think you can even put a roof on it, so I guess it is still convertible. But let's just say that you probably wouldn't want to be driving this car in these conditions. In the snow and the ice, it would be rather chilly with, you know, really no doors and no roof or anything. It would be rather chilly. But you know what, this car is a hell of a lot of fun to drive. You can absolutely throw this car around. After having the Camaro, which you had to be so careful with because it would step out and slide and stuff, with this, yes, you had to be careful with it, but you could kind of throw it around a bit more. It wasn't as quick as the Camaro, I don't believe, and because of that, it just, you know, you could kind of cruise around with it a bit more. Now, it did still have some legs about it. You could get it to move. However, you know, you could definitely take more speed in the corners with this one, because with the Camaro, you couldn't really chuck it around. It would just understeer or oversteer and just kind of go out wide, and you'd have a bit of an issue. Whereas with this car, with the Caterham, you could kind of throw it into the corners and really have a lot of fun. This was, I think I did this on my 2nd attempt. I think there was just one attempt where I ran a little bit too wide, you know, took a bit too much speed into one corner, and had to restart. But yeah, this one, it was just a lot of fun. You know, maybe didn't feel quite as quick. Well, actually, to be honest, it actually felt quicker than the Camaro, just because of how much fun I was having chucking it around and stuff. You know, in the long run, yeah, it probably wasn't as quick because of how I was driving it, but that's kind of how you had to drive it, and that was definitely the funnest way to drive it. Just, you know, throwing it around the corners and, you know, belting it as much as you can in the snow and ice out of the corners. The Caterham Seven 620R was a lot of fun. You know, Caterhams are not the sort of cars that I'm usually that interested in. I mean, I don't mind them, but they're not my favourite thing in the world. However, driving this one here, you know what? It was a hell of a lot of fun. One of the funnest cars I think I've ever driven on this series. So yeah, it is a thumbs up for the Caterham 620R. Our final car for today is the Renault R.S.01. This is an interesting little one. I was thinking of kind of a race car, a more crazy race car to go for. I decided to go for this. I don't know if this is actually a race spec. I mean, I think it is in some aspect, but you know, you've got this version, then you've got the GT3 version. I believe this version is actually quicker than the GT3 version, so I went for this one. This is just kind of the more normal version, I suppose. And, you know, we found it on this series a lot. The race cars, like these, the GT4, the GT3 cars, they actually fare pretty well, which is kind of not really what you expect. These cars are not designed to be driving in snow and ice. However, you know, they're designed to tackle with some slightly different conditions, you know, well, rain, clear, dry tracks. You know, they are designed to drive on different terrains, but, you know, I would have thought this would have been kind of more of an extreme for a car like this. However, you do find that these quicker cars, yes, you have to be careful with them on the power and taking too much speed into corners, but in the long run, they actually get around the course better than you'd expect. I mean, you know, the course is slippery. Yes, the track is slippery, but when you think about it, when you take that away, it's not like we're going through a bunch of snow. The snow, the embankments and that, they're on the outside of the track, so the actual track itself is alright apart from the ice, which is a bit slippery. So with these faster cars, when you can actually get some traction, and, you know, have the power and the aerodynamics that these race cars do, you know, they do go pretty quick and they're pretty fun to drive. I'm pretty sure I did this one on my first attempt. It might have been my second attempt, but kind of funny really, because, you know, usually we go from the first car being the easiest to the last car being the hardest, whereas this time it was pretty much the complete opposite. The first car we drove was the hardest to drive, and the last car was probably the easiest. I'd say the Caterham was most definitely the funnest to drive, but still, the Renault R.S.01 was a lot of fun. So we go on to the times for today. We have the Renault RS1 in 5th place, getting pretty high up there with a 158.500. It's the fastest non-kind of rally-oriented car. I mean, you know, the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo X isn't actually a rally car, it's just a road car, but, you know, it's designed, you know, that car is very rally-orientated. So, you know, the Renault RS01 does good in 5th place, beats the McLaren P1 GTR, which would be the next rear-wheel drive, kind of more road/racy car that's not built for off-road. We have to go a lot further down for the other two cars, though. The Chevrolet Camaro comes in 25th place with a 2 minutes 7.672. Not a bad time from that one, but it is a little bit of a handful. And then the Caterham Seven 620 comes directly behind it in 26th place with a 208.270. Although it is a lot of fun, it just doesn't quite have the speed and I suppose the grip in a lot of ways to compete with other cars. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.